Time for a movie review. And today we're looking at Coup, starring Peter Sarsgaard, Billy Magnussen, and Sarah Gadon. Great movie. Check it out. Here comes the review. Alright. It's review time, baby. We're looking at Coup. Great movie. My goodness. Just another day, another dollar. Serving up some alcohol in my bar. I'm kidding. Oh my god. This is great. I've never thought I'd be able to review a movie, but I guess here we are, doing it all. The boys back in town. This is the way I'm gonna be set up, so you don't have to see my hideous face all the time. All right, where do I start? Jeez. So, as you can see, the movie's called Coup, and it stars Peter Sarsgaard, Billy Magnussen, and Sarah Gadon. And the movie actually is very interesting. Good plot, great elements. It's set on a seaside estate during the 1918 Spanish flu. And it's a class war comedy. I like class war comedies personally. I think I'm a very much a sucker for class war comedies. You know, for example, like Sorry to Bother You, or Parasite. This one's kind of very similar to Parasite, with the invading of the rich folks' home and kind of trying to attempt to take it over and overthrow it. It's pretty good. Coup is a brilliant addition to the class war comedies, with very shining performances from Billy Magnussen as Mr. Horton, and specifically Peter Sarsgaard as Chef Floyd Monk, or so we think, Chef Floyd Monk. Little warning here before I get going a little more. Probably gonna get a little spoiler territory. So yeah, get a little bit of spoilers out there. Mainly because I like to talk about my favorite parts, and I can't do that without spoilers, can I? Yeah. So, well, the movie starts off with the suicide of we don't know. And Peter Sarsgaard is trimming his mustache, and he's like, an old mustache gave me a touch of class. I thought that was incredibly funny. And right off the back, you could see the great direction work from Austin Stark. And it's not just Austin Stark, he's got some backup. From Joseph Schuman. I hope I said that right. I was trying to think of how to say that. Oh yeah, good old Joseph Schuman and Austin Stark. Great directing. Okay, so we start off with Chef Floyd trimming his mustache, and he's getting ready for something. We don't know what, and then we peer over to a dead body with a gun shot wound in its head. And it's already intriguing right at the beginning. So then we get an introduction to Billy Magnussen's character, Mr. Horton, writing a piece that is lies. It's lies. It's lies. It's all lies. He's lying. It's he's lying his ass off. You don't give a shit. Yep. You don't give a crap. Oh yeah. So we got Jules, who is Mr. Horton's wife, on edge about society breaking down. And that was very interesting to me because you get to see different point of views from different people. We have Mr. Monk finally arriving at the mansion. Oh yeah, mansion. They have a mansion. Sanitizing Mr. Monk to enter the quarters because of the Spanish flu. That I found interesting. And you got Mr. Horton. Jesus. Who betrayed his father by selling him out and ruining his company. And early on in the film, we got Mr. Monk, who is given signs he knows more than he shows. I loved the maid, the Irish maid, tough and an accent that reminded me of my family. I think her name is Catherine. Catherine, yeah. There was also like an element of when living in this house that belongs to Mr. Horton. There's house rules, no alcohol. So, Mr. Monk quickly breaks those rules. And we find out that Miss Horton is a writer as well as Mr. Horton. And she starts to kind of form a friendship with Mr. Monk one night. By gambling, right? Yeah, gambling with them. She ends up gambling with the whole crew and staff. And then Mr. Horton's reaction is pretty dang funny. Also, lots of weird stuff starts happening at night. Mr. Horton's office is ransacked. Intruders start stealing their food that they're growing, so they're stuck with having to hunt for meat. That was goes against everything Mr. Horton represents and lives for. He doesn't like to kill. That's another house rule, no killing in the house. Kind of figured that would come back into bigger play later on in the film. It's lots of intrigue. You're trying to just figure out what Mr. Monk is planning the whole time, and how is he planning it, and why is he planning it. And then you got Mr. Horton, obviously he's criticizing Woodrow Wilson and upset that he's costing lives. And soon enough we find out that the Spanish flu has came to Egg Island.
And by that time, Mr. Monk is full, all out, breaking every rule. Every rule. That rule, that rule, that rule, that rule, that rule, that rule, every rule. Just all out. And he even tells Mr. Horton, basically, stay out of my way. That's the only rule. Don't get in my fucking way. And Mr. Horton he wants to be famous like Charlie Chaplin. That's a quip that's thrown up in the movie a couple times that I find hysterical. Because this kid's, they're like, you want to be like Charlie Chaplin? And then, so to upstage the coup on the house, Mr. Monk has to poison Catherine, the maid, with some mushrooms. I think it's mushrooms. But she gets poisoned with some mushrooms. Which leads to Mr. Monk saying that the quarters are unsanitary and they can't stay down there anymore. You don't know if it has the flu or any of those diseases in the air. So he convinces Mr. Horton to let him and the caretaker who helps with the children, I didn't get her name, and oh god, Mustafa, what was his name? Ugh. What I found really funny is when Mr. Monk poisoned Catherine. She's in the car and she's like, you. And Mr. Horton's like, yes, it's him. Like, what? And now, briefly after that, Mr. Horton starts to catch on, and he's starting to think it's not about the safety, and something bigger is being planned, and why Mr. Monk wants to come to the house. So there's also a famous writer played by Fisher Stevens, who Mr. Horton is talking to throughout the whole movie to advance his writing position and get a promotion, basically, and possibly into the political race. But it was great to see the actor Fisher Stevens. He played in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia as the writer-critic that Charlie kidnaps. So, great actor, good surprise appearance. Didn't see that coming. This movie is it's very funny. It's heartfelt, and I found myself rooting for both Mr. Monk and Mr. Horton. They're both very, very likable. But soon after they start to take over the quarters, they leave the quarters and start to come into the house. Again, I was saying that they started gambling. So the wife, Julie, Miss Horton, joins Mr. Monk and the staff to gamble. and Mr. Monk smiles at her to draw her in. There's a little bit of a tension there. I wonder if it could lead to a little bit of intercourse, huh? Probably. Yeah, it does. And they do it. So Catherine does get better, but at that time, transportation is shut down and the virus is getting worse. The flu, Spanish flu, virus, whatever. And then comes no food. So Mr. Monk asked to go hunt. But, you know, Mr. Horton's rules are no guns in the house. But Julie, Mrs. Horton, wants Mr. Monk to hunt, so she gives him a gun to go do it, therefore making Mr. Horton jealous, so he impedes on doing it himself. Well, come to find out that's probably kind of a big mistake, because he can't do it. He can't kill an animal. So Mr. Monk followed him outside and did it for him. And now this is where the arrangement comes in for Mr. Monk to kill the animal, and Mr. Horton takes the credit. Yeah. This leads to a little bit of bonding, but they don't really get along at all. It leads to a conversation poolside of Mr. Monk and Mr. Horton, where Mr. Horton wants to fire Mr. Monk, but Mr. Monk shockingly says, "You're fired. You're fired." Like, to Mr. Horton. And I'm trying to figure out why he keeps saying you're fired. What's the point? Is there a reason to it? Well, yeah, there was a reason to it. As it turns out, the people that were ransacking the office and taking the food, they worked for the government and took photos of Mr. Horton, you know, proving that he's lying about what he's writing about. And this sends Mr. Horton on a spiral, and he gets loaded drunk. My God, hilarious. He even says, as he stumbles into the pool room, crashing into whatever's on the side of him, and he goes, "Fear not, I am unscathed." Funny as hell. So he starts spiraling out of control and blaming Mr. Monk for all of the issues, which leads to a fight and gets him kicked out and sent down to the quarters, where Julia and Mr. Monk try to talk to Mr. Horton about what's going on, and still in denial about Mr. Monk, Mr. Horton upsets his wife. Ugh. Yeah. All right. And there's one final event that kind of shocked me a bit. So after Mr. Horton gets sent out to the quarters and basically so sick because he's not eating any meat, he's not a meat eater, and they ran out of rice and all he eats is rice. So he's not good at all. He's weak, needs food. You know, Mr. Monk puts a piece of meat on the floor. Basically says, hey, have this if you want. And he has to crawl to it to eat it. And one of the... probably gross. He starts just eating the steak off the ground like an animal. And I'm like, oh God, that's gross. So meanwhile, while he's eating the steak, we're cutting back into Mr. Monk and Julia. And they're getting along. And you see the looks they give each other, and you think, oh, uh-oh, they're gonna sleep with each other. Yeah, they do. And he ends up kissing her. They end up sleeping with each other. Mr. Horton's getting the strength that he needs to come up to the room. The sheriff shows up and was like asking for Mrs. Horton to come down and help. And while she goes down to help out with the sheriff, Mr. Horton comes back upstairs, confronts Mr. Monk while he's standing on the balcony with a gun, and shoots him dead. Yeah, what? Did not see that coming. That blew my mind. That was a really good movie. Great acting, funny scenes, funny characters. I highly recommend Coup. And if you have a chance to check out Coup, check out Coup. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. What do you say? Leave some ratings in the comments. What do you think of the movie and whatnot? This is my first review. It's probably meh. I'll get used to it. But cool. Alright. Great to meet you all. Dudja out.